This is Representative Pat Harrigan. He's Republican serving the state of North Carolina, also a member of the Armed Services Committee, as well as the Science, Space, and Technology Committee members. Welcome to the program. First time to the program.
Pedro, thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Let's start with your military background, because I think it would probably inform what you do on the Armed Services Committee. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, so I'm a West Point graduate, and then I went into the infantry, then went into the Special Forces, had a couple tours to Afghanistan in that time, and then I got out, started a company that's in the defense space, and then decided to run for Congress after the fall of Afghanistan. So I've had a heavy defense focus for quite some time in my life.
With your service in Afghanistan, you've seen what's happened while you were there and after that. How does that inform decisions when you make not only, say, in Afghanistan, but other matters of foreign policy on the Armed Services Committee?
Yeah, I think it certainly heavily informs the direction that I think this country should go, because I think we made a lot of mistakes in 20 years during the global war on terror, not just in Afghanistan, but all across the Middle East. We spent an awful lot of money that we have burdened on our children's children, and we did not achieve strategic outcomes that were productive for the United States of America. And so we've got two existential crises right now, in my opinion. One of them is debt, the other one is China. And as that informs the direction by which we move forward in the defense space, both of those things deserve, I'd say, the equal amount of respect.
When you see efforts on China that you talked about, I know it falls in the space of economics, but when you see tariffs being placed on the country that the president announced, how does that fit broadly into foreign policy and particularly with armed services?
Yeah, I think President Trump is simply trying to get a better deal for the American people, right? He does not like countries that manipulate their currency, that subsidize their market economies, and create an unfair playing field for American manufacturing and American innovation. And so I think he's just trying to level the playing field. He did that in his first term. He's doing that again. And I think that makes America more competitive from a defense perspective, particularly when you start talking about Section 232 tariffs, right? That is very specifically to protect U.S. national security and very important manufacturing interests that we have to have here in the United States in order to provide for our national defense.
I imagine those would include those in the state of North Carolina as well when it comes to that manufacturing.
Absolutely right, all 50 states. And that's just a reality that we have to contend with, and we've got to make sure. I think a lot of people don't really care if we get ties or our suits from China, but I do think that they care if we get critical minerals that go into our fighter jets or chips that go into all of our governmental computers. Those need to be coming not from an adversary.
When it comes to being on the Armed Services Committee, what would you say is the focus in the months ahead, particularly now that Republicans control the House and the Senate?
Yeah, I think that there's a very clear problem with our defense spending, right? We are at a near historic low. We've never spent less on defense since World War II. We're at 2.9% of GDP. Right now, China's at 7%. And so we have a very serious concern with the amount of money that we are investing into our defense. I personally have a serious concern that the military that we have today is not the military that we need in order to win against China, should we not be able to successfully deter that conflict, which is what everybody really cares about more than anything else. But we've got to be strong in order to not fight. And so the way that we're going to accomplish that is, number one, we've got to reinvest in our industrial base, and we've got to get our industrial base into a paradigm where we're producing the low-cost solutions to our enemies' high-cost problems, because right now it is the other way around. We're the ones who are producing the high-cost solutions to our enemies' low-cost problems, and that causes us to lose the economics of war. And history is very unkind to countries that lose the economics of war.
What's an example of a low-cost solution to a high-cost problem?
A Stinger missile, right? Look at the experience that America had in Afghanistan in the 1980s with the Mujahideen. We were providing circa $1985, $8,500 Stinger missiles to the Mujahideen that were using that to shoot down Soviet aircraft that cost the Soviets between $2 and $8 million to produce. And so $8,500 investment, $2 to $8 million return on that investment. That is a fantastic investment. We should have made that investment. We did make that investment. Not only did we cause the Soviets to lose Afghanistan, shortly thereafter, they actually lost their country over it. And so what we're doing today, though, is we're sending $2.6 million Patriot missiles to Ukraine to shoot down drones that Russia's manufacturing for $50,000. That doesn't work.
Our guest with us until 8 o'clock, and if you want to ask him questions, 202-748-8000, one for Republicans, 202-748-8000 for Democrats and Independents, 202-748-8002. Text us your questions or comments at 202-748-8003. Elon Musk has been tasked to find savings and cost savings throughout the government. Should he apply that type of philosophy towards the Defense Department?
Absolutely, and I'll work with him to do that because, yes, on one hand, we need to increase our defense expenditures. Number two, and I would say in parallel with increasing those defense expenditures, we absolutely have to change the philosophy by which we're acquiring military technology and hardware. And I think that we need to institute a principle that if it, as Pete Hegseth has said, Secretary Hegseth, we are going to align capabilities to threats. I think that if the cost of what it takes for our country to produce the capability exceeds what it costs our adversaries to produce the threat, we should not acquire the capability. And that needs to be the driving force behind the revolutionary attack that we take on our defense industrial complex moving forward. That's how we're going to push these defense contractors into actually providing low-cost solutions to our enemy's high-cost problems.
You've seen Mr. Musk and how he's been impacting Washington over the last couple of days. Should he apply that kind of philosophy to the Defense Department? What's the role of Congress in either agreeing on these cut savings or pushing back on some of the savings?
Yeah, I think that what Elon Musk is doing is necessary. I think what he's doing is he's simply diving into the P&L on the balance sheet of all these different agencies that make up the federal government, and he's throwing up red flags where he sees them. And at that point, it's up to either the president with executive authority or Congress with legislative authority to do something about that, to choose to do something about it in the first place, and then what the particular course of action should be to get the American taxpayer a better deal for the money that they're spending and respect their tax dollars again.
To what degree are you concerned about Mr. Musk's approach and either the president's or Congress's ability to say, wait a minute, do this, but don't do that, or at least how much control over his actions?
I think anytime that you are messing with government expenditures, it's going to create a backlash because people like to get the money from the government. I mean, our society has become very, very good at voting themselves money. And at some point, you look at $36.2 trillion worth of national debt. You look at a deficit spend rate of $1.8 trillion a year. That's in the hole per year. That has to change, and that's not going to be a fun process.